They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
He's a drover drifting over western plains.
He's a city lad, a clock down Flinders Lane.
They're in the trenches at Lone Pine and on the Flanders firing line. A willing band of ordinary men. He's all of them, he's one of us, born beneath the Southern Cross. Side by side, we say with pride, he is all of them, and he is one of us. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
He's a pilot on a midnight bombing raid.
He's a naval seaman on the Armadale.
She's a nurse in Vietnam. They're on patrol in Oriscam.
Sons and daughters rise into the cause.
She's all of them, she's one of us, born beneath the Southern Cross. Side by side, we say with pride, she is all of them, she is all of them, she is one of us. The spirit of the ANZACS, proud and strong. The spirit of the ANZACS will live on and on and on. He's all of them, he's one of us, born beneath the Southern Cross. Side by side, we say with pride, he's all of them, he's all of them, she's all of them, they are one of us. They are one of They are one of
When war broke out in 1914, Australia had been a federated nation for only 13 years, and its government was eager to establish a reputation among the nations of the world. When Britain declared war in August 1914, Australia was automatically placed on the side of the Commonwealth. In 1915, Australian and New Zealand soldiers formed part of the expedition that set out to capture the Gallipoli Peninsula in order to open the Dardanelles to the Allied navies. The ultimate objective was to capture Constantinople, now Istanbul, the capital of the Ottoman Empire and ally of Germany. The Australian and New Zealand forces landed on Gallipoli on 25th of April, meeting fierce resistance from the Ottoman Turkish defenders. What had been planned as a bold stroke to knock Turkey out of the war quickly became a stalemate, and the campaign dragged on for 8 months. At the end of 1915, the Allied forces were evacuated from the peninsula, with both sides having suffered heavy casualties and endured great hardships. More than 8,000 Australian soldiers had died in the campaign. Gallipoli had a profound effect on Australians at home, and 25th of April soon became the day on which Australians remembered the sacrifice of those who died in war. Although the Gallipoli campaign failed in its military objectives, the actions of Australian and New Zealand forces during the campaign left a powerful legacy. What became known as the ANZAC legend became an important part of the identity of both nations, shaping the ways in which they viewed both their past and their future. In 1916, the first ANZAC Day commemorations were held on the 25th of April. The day was marked by a wide variety of ceremonies and services across Australia, a march through London, and a sports day in the Australian camp in Egypt. In London, more than 2,000 Australian and New Zealand troops marched through the streets. A London newspaper headline dubbed them the Knights of Gallipoli. Marches were held all over Australia. In the Sydney March, convoys of cars carried soldiers wounded on Gallipoli and their nurses. For the remaining years of the war, ANZAC Day was used as an occasion for patriotic rallies and recruiting campaigns, and parades of serving members of the AIF were held in most cities. During the 1920s, ANZAC Day became established as a national day of commemoration for the more than 60,000 Australians who had died during the war. In 1927, for the first time, every state observed some form of public holiday on ANZAC Day. By the mid-1930s, all the rituals we now associate with the day, dawn vigils, marches, memorial services, reunions, two-up games, were firmly established as part of ANZAC Day culture. Later, ANZAC Day also served to commemorate the lives of Australians who died in the Second World War, and in subsequent years the meaning of the day has been further broadened to include those who lost their lives in all the military and peacekeeping operations in which Australia had been involved. ANZAC Day was first commemorated at the memorial in 1942. At the time, government orders prohibited large public gatherings in case of a Japanese air attack, so it was a small occasion with neither a march nor a memorial service. Since then, ANZAC Day has been commemorated at the memorial every year. Australians recognise 25th of April as a day of national remembrance, which takes two forms. Commemorative services are held across the nation at dawn, the time of the original landing, while later in the day, former servicemen and servicewomen meet to take part in marches through the country's major cities and in smaller centres. Commemorative ceremonies are more formal and are held at war memorials around the country. In these ways, ANZAC Day is a time at which Australians reflect on the many different meanings of war. It is often suggested that the dawn service observed on ANZAC Day has its origins in a military routine still followed by the Australian Army. The half-light of dawn was one of the times favoured for launching an attack. Soldiers in defensive positions were woken in the dark before dawn, so by the time first light crept across the battlefield they were awake, alert, and manning their weapons. This is still known as the stand to, as dusk is equally favourable for battle. The stand to was repeated at sunset. After the First World War, returned soldiers sought the comradeship they'd felt in those quiet, peaceful moments before dawn. A dawn vigil became the basis for commemoration in several places after the war. It is difficult to say when the first dawn services were held, as many were instigated by veterans, clergymen and civilians from all over the country. A dawn requiem mass was held at Albany as early as 1918, and a wreath laying in commemoration took place at dawn in Toowoomba the following year. In 1927, a group of returned men returning at dawn from an ANZAC Day function held the night before came upon an elderly woman laying flowers at the as yet unfinished Sydney cenotaph. Joining her in this private remembrance, the men later resolved to institute a dawn service the following year. Some 150 people gathered at the cenotaph in 1928 for a wreath laying and 2 minutes of silence. This is generally regarded as the beginning of organised dawn services. Over the years, the ceremonies have developed into their modern forms and have seen an increased association with the dawn landings of 25th of April 1915.
On every 25th of April since 1915, New Zealanders and Australians at home and abroad have gathered to commemorate not just those ANZACs who died on that day, but every one of our servicemen and women who died in war or as a result of it since then. Gallipoli gave us pride, not in war, but in the knowledge that New Zealanders and Australians put to the test would not fail. That spirit and tradition sustained our forces in many later battles and trials, and in many ways sustains us now. Duty, patriotism, individual sacrifice, and the affirmation of the New Zealanders and Australian relationship are enduring legacies of Gallipoli and all subsequent conflicts involving our two nations. For myself, having the honour to have served brings special meaning to ANZAC Day with the traditions we continue, but also the honour of having three great uncles, all brothers, who volunteered to serve their country far from home, and two of whom landed on the shores of Gallipoli on day one of the assault. Unfortunately, one of them died on the shores of Gallipoli on the second day of the campaign and is remembered with a plaque on ANZAC Beach. The brothers continued on, playing parts in some of the biggest battles of the Western Front, including the Somme, Bullecourt, Villers-Bretonneux, Hamel, Flanders and more. To all those that have served, I thank you and your families for your contribution and willingness to serve. To those that continue to serve, I pray that you stay safe and always come home to your loved ones. Your service is appreciated and respected by many. Ensure you remember that. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. Lest we forget.